Hello, everyone. This is Coach Alex, and I'm trying a new thing here where I'm going to record my webcam here along with doing the development work on the PC parent service that I've been working on. Let me go ahead and get my project up here in cancel. We won't do that. In GitHub. There we go. And I will go to the actual project and we'll see where we're at. So right now, we are in the process of coding the notifications, coding the user logins. We've created a configuration file and we do need to do some encryption of that, of the settings. So I didn't want, since this particular application is running local to my machines here at my house, I didn't want to mess around with the app config file. So I'm going to leave that alone, even though I've gone ahead and put some stuff in there. I'm going to take that out of there because we really won't need it for what we're doing. So we can probably go back to this particular task in our project. And, let me move myself up here. Okay. And it was assigned to me. I'm going to go ahead and close this issue. And so right now we've only got 2 tasks in progress right now. We've got to code our notifications and we've got to code user logins. So here's what we're going to do. I've got logic in here now, and I'll show you what I did before. I created a task branch, and the task branch is going to allow me to go through and step through creation of my logic. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I always yawn when I'm on here. And so if I go into my repository and I click down here in the repository, so you can see where I'm in the repository. If I click the down arrow next to the branch of master and I click where it says PCParentService issue 4, if I click that, you'll see all of my documentation that I've added, the actual parent service, and a test project that I've created in the interim. And we'll get to what that test project does for us momentarily. But if you click in the parent service, you'll see where I've added some more logic in here. I added a couple of interfaces, and I've actually added another interface since this morning. Some actual classes for my logic. So if you click in here, you can see that I've done some work in here for my logic classes. I actually added a public enumerator. We'll get into what that is in a moment. And then, of course, I've got a test project out here where I can test my logic before I actually launch the logic here. And so let's go back over to, let me close my PowerShell here. Let's go back over to our actual program. So all of the links that I've gone to, I'm actually saving in a notepad document, just a regular text document called dev links, and it's in the GitHub account. It's in the GitHub repository. So as I add to it, I throw the link in there. And some of these I have used, but these are things that I've looked into. Some I may not have used, like for example, the SHA 256 hash. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Not right away. Maybe in another story or another sprint. And so some of these I have done. So for example, you'll see creating a Windows service. I've definitely been here. So let's open up that link because that's kind of my guide of how I've been going about this. And then the logic that I have in there, I've actually created a custom event log. But what I did, and so what the event log does is it allows you, let me open up my event log. Oh, it's event viewer. That's what it is. And if you go into the event viewer, I need to clean the logs out in this thing here. And let me clear that out because, oh gosh, 21,000. I don't think I've ever cleaned this out. What the event viewer is every time my program runs, or anytime you have a Windows program that runs, you log some kind of a message to this event log in Windows. Now, like I said before in a previous video, this particular service is only going to run on Windows machines because the event viewer and the event log is a Windows application. So you can't run this on Macs and Linux boxes and stuff. So anyway, the event log, what it does is it will clear that out. Anytime you have a program that runs and you are going to you want your program to track what it does. If it logs in, when a person logs in, or when they log out, when it writes a message, whatever the case may be, if it throws an exception, you want to write to what's called the Windows event or application log. And so there's different logs here. There's security logs. I've got 35,000. Oh my gosh. I need to clear that log too. Clear that log there. I'll probably clear that. Yeah, there's only 100 in that one. Clear that log there. And there's none there. So we're in here. There's 0 records logged to our application log. So what your application does is when it writes to a log, it writes into what you're seeing on my screen right now. It logs a source, an event ID, a level, and some other things, and you can read, what's going on. So it just tracks the status of your application. If it has a failure, if it has an exception, when it starts up, when it shuts down, that's what you want to do. Is write to that particular log. So part of the instructions that we were following on this particular web page from MSDN, I should say Microsoft, not MSDN, is we renamed the service, and then we were adding functionality to the service to write to the event log. So right here is where I was at. And so what I did was I was following what this is doing here, but I was like, you know what? Let me separate my event logging capabilities into its own class, so I don't have to clutter up my code here. And so what I did was I created over here a logger class that will go out, and if I call a method inside of my logger class, it will write to my event viewer log, my application log. So you see I have 3 different log types here. I've got a login event, I've got a transaction event, and then I've got an exception event, and I'm going to have to write another method called log out. And so basically what this does is when a person logs in, I want to write a message to my event viewer. When a person does something during the time that they're logged in, I want to write whatever they did to the transaction log section of my application log. And then finally, if I have an error of any kind, or something that makes my program error out or throw an exception, then I've got this write exception to event viewer method as well. And so what they do basically is this particular one creates a log entry, and it creates a log for my service. The next one, the one I was working on more, creates any kind of a transaction that happens. It says successful transaction, and then I might change this logic to track exactly what's happening at the time. And then lastly, if there's an exception or an error, I throw that in there too. So that's what I did there. And then what I did was I created what's called an interface of this particular class. Now, how do I explain interfaces? Interfaces, let me see. Okay, so in C#, we talked earlier in a previous video about abstraction. And what interfaces do is they allow you to expose methods from a class, but only those methods in that class or only those properties in that class through abstraction. So instead of me allowing people to go through the logger class, what I want to do is I want to make this logger class only accessible to my interface. And so my interface is kind of like a door into my class. They can't change anything in my class during the transactions. They can't do anything else but call the methods that are inside of my class and use the methods inside my class. And then what happens is they have to use all of the methods inside of my class. They can't use some. They have to use all of them as they go on. So like, for example, if I came in here and I created a write log out, like I said I was going to have to, right? Log out or log off to event viewer. And then I can say our message, user logged out at, and then I can put a time in there. You know what, instead of me doing that, equals string dot format. This is just another way. String dot format is another way to concatenate a string together. So that's what I'm going to do here. At, and I put a 0 there. And then I say date time now dot date. To string. Let's see, month, day, year, and then hours, minutes, seconds, something like that. And then what I do in here is I log that it's an information type event. I'm going to write the message right here. I'm going to log that's information instead of an error or an exception or anything like that. And actually, let me see what other enumerators are there. Yep, information. And then down here, these are the types of enumerators that we can have there. I'll put log off equals 104. And over here, I can say dot log off like that. And I'll hit save that. Now, what's going to happen is I've got this particular method that I have in there. That I created. And what that means is I don't have it in this interface right now. So when I go over to my mail client notify, which is my notification class that sends the actual email out if there's an error or whenever, you know, somebody logs in or whatever, you'll notice this line right here. The logger class, the logger interface only uses the 3 methods that I created before. So if it's a logger dot, you notice I only have these 3 right here. So to expose that interface to this particular class over here, I need to write that method that I just created, which is this log off, into this interface. Get rid of the public there and put my semicolon, save it. And now if I go back over and I say logger dot, it's right there. I can call it if I need to. Now I want to do that so that it exposes to any of the classes that I make. And we can test this by using, let me save my authentication class here quick. We'll get back to the authentication class in a minute. Okay, so I had to do a little bit of cleaning up there. I had some emails and passwords exposed there. So what I did was I created a test project. Now, what test projects allow you to do is they allow you to test logic that's inside of your code before you've created everything and tied everything together. So you can create a test project, and then you can test pieces of your code out to make sure that they work before you get too down the road. I have my boss to thank for that. Thanks, Rob. Because he told me about this, I think a few weeks ago. He was like, hey, why don't you just make a test class and test this out? So what I've done is I've created a test class, and what my test class allows me to do is debug through my email notification stuff. Now, one of the things that I need to test, though, is the authentication. I am sending emails from an Outlook account to other accounts. Now, what Office Live does, or Office 365, or whatever the case may be, any email service that you are trying to hit through code, you have to authenticate through that service, and they have things in place that they are going to test the email that you're sending emails from. And they're doing that to make sure that you're not just spamming people with erroneous emails or fake email addresses and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a key to store my username and my password on my system registry here on the computer. Now, the beauty of this is once I store that key on the registry one time, it'll always be there unless the registry is wiped out. But the logic will be there as well. And now, full stop, this, not knowing how to do this, cost me a job. I'm very transparent when I say that. But this is something that had I known about this particular, how to do this, it wouldn't have cost me so dearly in the past. But anyway, you live and you learn. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue working on my authentication class. Now, here's what I've done. Let me go back to my test unit here and copy that commented out code here. And then we need to paste that in there. Okay. So here's what I'm doing. In my authentication class, the Windows Live account. So the first thing that you need to understand or do is you have to have an email that you can send emails from. Outlook accounts are free. So I, a long time ago, created a Windows Live account for this specific purpose. I don't take any emails from it. I don't send emails from it. The only thing that happens is that my program goes out, signs into that email address, and sends emails to me based on what's happening and what the program sees. That's what it's going to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to store a key or a registry key on your computer so that you can authenticate against services. And again, like I said, once you put this in there on your system, it's in there. It's always in there. Okay, so let me move this logic up because this logic needs to go up there. There we go. And so if you're not aware of the, let me stop right here. Let me stop right here. Because I can hear one of my coworkers saying this. Now, I'm going to show you how to alter the registry on your computer. However, I am not responsible if you mess it up. The registry on your computer are the instructions to your computer when you sign into Windows and you're logging into Windows and your computer's starting up and booting up, of what programs to run, what services to start up, and all that other kind of stuff. It holds user information in there for you and whatever the case may be. So if you mess it up, if you go poking around in the registry and you mess it up and you brick your computer, it's not my fault. I've done this a million times. I've never bricked the computers before, so messing with the registry it's an advanced thing. Now, I'm not going to be messing with it all that much, but I'm going to be adding to the registry and maybe deleting a couple of keys that are not important to Windows running on my machine. So that's the caveat. If you mess it up, it's on you. Okay, so let me explain this code here of what I'm doing here behind my test browser there. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I have created a key or a sub key, and that key is going to be in the current user directory in the registry. So to open up your registry, go into your search bar down there and type reg, and if you type reg, it'll pop up there for you. Click open. You get the nice little thing that pops up, says, "Are you sure?" Yep. Hopefully you all saw that. And what happens is it throws up this machine here, this little group here. I am going to add my keys to the HKey current user, and I'm going to create a test keys directory. You see mine is already over there. Let me delete these two out of there so you can see what happens. Okay. So that's where we're going to create our keys. And actually, I'm going to change this test keys into PC parent keys. Save that. Now, so what's going to happen is under HKey current user, it's going to create a folder in here, and it's going to be called PC parent keys. Then under that particular directory, that key, I'm going to create two subkeys called PCP user and PCP pass. And what this is going to do, it's going to store my username and the password for my email address that I need to send from, and the password to log into that email address. That's what it's going to do. However, I'm not going to store that in the clear. I'm going to transform that into an unreadable string of data or a base 64 string of data. The reason why I'm going to do it that way is because when I store the base 64 string of data, it's going to allow me to take that base 64 string of data, which you can't, unless you know what you're doing and you grab it, but you'd have to have access to somebody's registry, and you'd have to know where the keys are at. But what's going to happen is I'm going to take that base 64 string of data, store it on my registry, And when I need to come in here and access the email to send an email out, I'm going to go onto my registry, grab the keys off of my registry for my username and password, and then I'm going to take those keys, plug them into where I need to, and then send out the email that I need to. Sounds like a lot, but it's not that hard to do. But let's just build the logic for it. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we've built a method called retrieve credentials. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a public yeah, I'll make it a public one. Okay, so because I'm going to put it in an interface later. So then what's going to happen is inside of this, I'm going to store my username and password. So before we get too far down the road, we need to learn how we're going to create the keys to do this. Now, you can do this in a separate program. And one of the places I used to work, we used to have a VB script that would do this for you. We'd send out the email with the VB script in it, and a user who had administrator rights would come to your PC and they click on this VB script file and it would run and it would create the keys for you. I'm not going through all of that because I'm just doing everything here. So what I'm going to do, actually, let's just make a different public bool. And we're going to call it create keys. All right. And then the stuff that's going to have to do with creating the keys, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to put it up here. Because I won't have to, when I run this on this machine, I won't have to do this anymore. And actually, if I think about it, somebody just texted me about doing something for our young people. If I think about it, on the first time that I run this on another machine, what I can do is I can store the key in here. How do I want to do that? Well, here's how this works. When I get ready to run this particular service on a machine, I have to have these keys in there before I run that. Otherwise, I'll never be able to send an email because I'll always get an error. So I'll determine how I'm going to do that later. In this instance, I'm just going to show you how I'm going to do this here. Okay, so I've got two different methods now. One called create the keys and one called retrieve the keys. And instead of it calling it retrieve credentials, we'll call it retrieve. Yeah, we'll leave it as credentials. Create credentials. We'll call this create credentials, and we'll what we'll do is we'll make that consistent for now. So line by line, we create a username and a password, and then down here we're going to create a new key. Actually, I can put that on this line here. And then, so we create a key called PC Parent Keys. We create a two sub-key values, PCP user and PCP pass. And what's going to happen is convert to base 64 string is going to encode these letters and symbols into a base 64 string. And then what this does is you have to pass a bytes array into this convert to base 64 string. So we're going to take our two strings up here and convert them into an array of bytes. And I'll show you what that kind of looks like Can I do it that way? Yeah. I'll show, you know, here, let me do it this way. Var byte array equals, and I'll just go down here and put you in there. And I'll show you what it looks like. It's going to be the same thing that we're going to pass into these two keys here. So it's going to go out. It's going to convert these to an array of bytes, convert them to a base 64 string. Then it's going to put the values into these two keys here. It's going to close the key, and then I'm done. So I can debug this using my test project. So what I'm going to do, let me give this a different method up here. So test method, we're going to create a method called public void, and we're going to call this one test credentials. And in this test credentials method, we're going to try to create our credentials and retrieve them. And so we can actually make that 2. Create credentials. And we're going to call this retrieve credentials. Now, to be able to do this, what I'm also going to do is go back to my authentication class. Now, one of the cool things about using Microsoft Visual Studio is it gives you a ton of different shortcuts where you can do things. Instead of me coming over here and creating an interface and going through all that typing, which it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is what it is, I can right click on the class and say quick actions and refactorings. When I left click on that, I can say extract the interface, and I can say give me a new interface called authentication class, authentication class, which shows that it is an interface. It's going to create a new file, or you can add it to this current file. If you want to cut down on the number of files, you can add it to the current file, just kind of, you know. Then it tells you, or it asks you what members or what methods do you want to use to create your interface. And you see I have the 2 created there. So I'll click OK. It automatically does the inheritance, and it creates a new file called authentication class, and it does everything that I needed to do already. And it even put my using, because I have a generic collection up here, and it put that generic collection up there. So now over here on my test unit, I can come over here and create a new instance, or new a stub into my authentication class, mock authenticate. And over here, I can say mock authenticate equals new authentication class. And I don't have to have that there, do I? Nope. Okay. All right. So now I can do a test. I can create test cases, basically, that will test all my logic. And then I can go through my test logic here and run my code and see if it works before I create my service, try to install my service, and it blows up because my stuff doesn't work. In the meantime, over here on our application, if we refresh this, you know, we've got some enrollment errors and stuff like that. We got some stuff going on. That's other stuff we're in. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create my credentials. So if I come over here and type in here, now I've got my mock authenticate class, and it says it's not being used. And I can say mock authenticate dot create credentials, and it's a Boolean. So underneath here, what I can do is I can say asset or assert, I'm sorry, assert dot is true. And I can say this right here. Instead of doing that, do that. So now what that's going to do, if I debug this, I can step through my code to see if it's going to actually work. And I can also open up my registry to see if it's going to work too. Now, you can test the logic out by faking it, going over onto your registry and, you know, actually creating an actual registry key. Man, I was drawing a blank there. But I'm not going to do that for right now. We'll do that another time. So now, if I put a breakpoint there and I come over to my Test Explorer and I right click on my Create Credentials method, first of all, let me rebuild my solution, my entire solution. Anytime you make a change to your logic, you want to rebuild the entire solution so that your test project can automatically see any changes in logic. It's just, I don't know if you have to do that. It's just something that I do, you know. Okay, so I'm going to right click and hit debug on my Create Credentials. It'll pop up my breakpoint right or not. It didn't do it. So let's see what happened here. Let's breakpoint right there. Say debug. It is not doing the logic. Let's refresh this. Make sure it's not screwing around. Nope, it's not screwing around with that. That's test initialize. Let's create credentials. It's test method, test method. Oh, wait, I know what's going on. No, it's there. Huh. Let me try this one out. Debug that one. This was working before. Let me debug that again. Let's make sure all of our test cases are. Yep, our service is. Rebuild it again. Rebuild succeeded. Debug. Let's see what's going on here. Well, that's weird. Was it because I got rid of that app config stuff there? I didn't think so. Let me look at my authentication class here. That looks fine. That has all of my references where it's supposed to be. Well, those references are fine. Why aren't you starting up there, yo? Let's debug that and see what happens. Oh. Let's just run it and see what happens. Repeat last run. It's not even going through it. Refresh that. Yeah, it's definitely not, it's not hitting my logic, so let's do this. Let us commit our changes to our repository. It all. And then let's close the solution. Let's close Visual Studio. We'll relaunch Visual Studio. This is working upstairs in my other computer here. So I'm not sure what's going on here. We'll just relaunch it and see what we get. See if there's a problem with hold up. What's going on here? I need to go to my code repository. That's where it's supposed to be. Right. Let's go looking again here. B. Code repository. No, wait. Something's up. It's not in the right spot there. Yeah. 229. Here's what we'll do. Let's reopen that solution. I've got way too many of them on here or something. Let's just go here. We know this is one we were just messing with. We'll just reopen the solution from here. So let's close this Visual Studio. We're done down there. And then what we'll do, make myself smaller there. Yeah, I'm small. Okay. So we committed it. Let's sync it up to the server. And we're going to do a little cleanup here. Sync. Push. Okay, let me close the solution. Close Visual Studio. Go to this code repository. That's where it should be, right there. Yeah. And then let me delete that out of there. We're going to open up Visual Studio 2019 again. We got some errors there. And then we're going to go over to connect to our repository. We're going to clone the repository there. Browse. It says I've already cloned it. I wonder if that's what the problem is. C users. C users. Alex. Source. Repos. There's main. There's the service. I don't want to keep it on my C drive. I want to keep it on my B drive. And then we'll put it in there. Okay, so we're going to browse over to my B drive, your code repository. Click OK. Browse. Again, B, code repository. It's not over there. Okay. And then we'll say clone. That's going to pull everything that I just checked in. And in the meantime, it's doing its thing there. Shimon. Yeah. I'll go over to recent projects and I'll say clear. Don't clear and restart. Let's do it again. Okay. Go over to there. Double click on my B, PCParentService. Go to manage branches. Go into my remote and I'm going to check out my remote branch. So that's going to bring down my changes from my remote branch that I just checked in. So again, this is one of the great things about GitHub. You don't have to start all this stuff over. So now all of the code that's under there, I can check out and I can work on. Click home, click the solution, and it should open up the solution on my PC now. Did I click it? Yes, I did. So now if I go back over to Solution Explorer, there we are. We're back where we started at. I'll click that. I'll go into my test project. There's our stuff. And we're just waiting for Visual Studio. We're going to rebuild our solution. Because technically this is the first time we've ever built it on this computer once we brought it in like we did. Now we see our test cases again. I don't know if this is even going to work. We're going to go to our create credentials and click that. And we're going to try to debug this and see what happens. I don't know why it's not running. Yeah, it's running now. Okay, so now I'm going to click F11 to go into the solution, into my method. And then I'm going to hit F10 to step through. Let me reopen my registry editor. Yep. Okay, and you see we've got our keys here again. Let me do it this way. So as we step through, we're going to create a subkey called PC Parent Keys, and there it is right there. We don't have any keys in it yet, but we're about to. We're going to hit F10. And if you look, we've got the bytes, someemail.outlook.com, and it's changing to a bunch of bytes here. And then we're going to take that array of bytes and we're going to transform it into a base 64 string and put it under key PCP user. So when I hit F10 and I refresh over here, there it is right there, and I've got a string under there. I'll do the same thing with the password. F10, and I click refresh, and I've got a password and a user there. And I hit F10, and I return true. And now, underneath my test credentials method, if I hit F10, it's true. And that's going to stop my test, and boom, that one's green. Now I just create test cases or test methods or test cases for each of my pieces of logic that I want to test there. So that's a great way to test out to see if your logic works before you start to tie everything together in the main service that we're going to run. So I can do the same thing over here. I can say retrieve credentials. Now in my authentication class, I've got this receive credentials method, and it's going to create a list of strings that I get back. And what I want to do here, I've got an example of logic here, is I'm going to convert these strings that are in my registry. See, they're long, ugly looking things there. I'm going to take those values, grab them, and then I'm going to turn them from being base 64 strings into regular strings that I can then pass into my my username and my password for my email address. Let me paste this code over here that I grabbed here. Key A and key P. I'm gonna give this a more descriptive name here. This isn't going to be key A. This is going to be username key. I'm going to take username key. Password key. And so then what's going to happen is, and actually, instead of me doing a right line, I'll just do a var. Var. Go to the end. Get rid of that. So what's going to happen is it's going to, and let me rebuild my solution. It's going to look under this particular registry. It's going to look under this subkey, under this key, and I need to change that from test keys to PC parent keys. I think that's what I call it. Yep. And then it's doing just some logic to grab, where the keys are located at in this one right here. So let me rebuild that again. And then what it's going to do, it's going to come down and it's going to grab the values out of these keys. And if there's no value in the keys, then it's going to write the words no value in there, so it returns something for you. I don't like the way that's doing. H key, current user, sub key. Let's clean that up. Format. 0 room 1 comma 0 comma 1. I don't like that. Does it have to be a constant? No, it could be a string. Let's make it a string, man. These strings. I don't know why I made it a constant. And this would be 0, 1. Oop. 1, comma, comma. There we go. So these are key names right here, subkey, and registry, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember what I put the T as. So now I'm going to write a test case for this. And instead of returning a string, I am going to take that and say boom. And instead of doing an is true, are equal, and I can say credential. So I'm expecting 2 credentials to come back. Let me adjust my, there we go. I'm expecting 2 credentials to come back. You know what? Let me just put it over here. There we go. No. Right there, Alex. I'm expecting 2 credentials to come back. And so, because they're a set of keys, and so it's going to be credential A, username, credential B, password, right? So what I can say is I can say credential keys dot count, comma, and I can say 2 credential keys dot count, because I'm expecting 2 keys. I can also say assert are equal, and I can say, you know, since we're putting this in there, I can say I'm expecting this in my first key. Oh, no, Alex. What are you doing, man? I'm expecting this in my first key to come back. And I can say credential, and see now since it's a list of keys, I have to loop through it. Kind of like a Python dictionary. If you have multiple dictionaries in there, or a list of dictionaries, or a list of something, you got to iterate through it. So let's do a for each loop. For each var key in bunch of keys. How do I want to do that? See, if I do it this way and I look for the email first, it'll pass the first test, but it won't pass the second test. So let me make a int x equals 0. So let me do it this way. If x equals 0, then do that test. So I'm expecting some email at outlook.com, so I can say key. If x equals 1, then I'm expecting the password to come back. Some password like this. And here I'm going to say x plus plus. Oop. It just adds 1 to the x there at the end of my loop. So I can test to see, and this one's kind of a redundant test now. Actually, what I can do is I can move that test to the top, like that, and I can test to see return, and I can say test values of keys, all right? And so what I want it to do is here, it's going to, I've got this list here that I want to return. So now I just need to add to that particular list. So I'll say, I'll do it this way. So I'll say return string dot add username key. Uh-oh, it doesn't like that. Oh, you know why? I'm in the wrong spot here. Like this. Because that's not a, it's not a key of string. That's not a string. It's an object that does the actual work for you and retrieves the key. So all of this will give me a string back. But I don't want to do all this now. I'll just do that. And then do the same thing here. And then, so I put these into my lists. All right, so to go back over this again, I'm going to come in, create a new list to return my keys. Come in here. Look for that particular registry table. Look for this key, the parent key. Look for this key. Then I'm going to come through, retrieve the keys, and put them into these two values. And these are the base 64 strings that are in there now. I'm going to convert the base 64 strings here, store it into my list, do the same thing for the password, store that into my list, return that, come through and make sure they match. And there are two of them. So let's rebuild our project, our solution. And we'll click on where it says retrieve credentials and debug that. So we're going to hit F11 to step into our logic. And uh-oh. Something's wrong here. Something was not in the correct format. H key current user, PC parent keys, and it's probably because oh, I've got an extra bracket there. Right there. That'll work. Rebuild. Recording time. Ooh, we've been going an hour. So now let's redebug this retrieve credentials again. F11, F10, F10. There we go. So you see our H key current user, PC parent keys, and it's going to do our current user there. We have F10, F10. We've got our base 64. Uh-oh. Got something wrong here. Key name. Doesn't like something in there. And maybe it's because we've got this in here. Let's put 1 there instead of 2. Let's do that again. Rebuild. Debug. F11, 10, 10, 10. There we go. Now we've got data back from our registry. So what we did was we just read our registry here. Now we're going to take those keys and we're going to transform them into, and we can watch down here, we're going to transform them into actual strings that we can use for our email and password. So we're going to hit F10 a couple of times. There's our some email at outlook.com and some password. We're going to keep F10ing. So now we're going to see how many keys that we get back. We see we got 2 back there. F10, and that's true. Then we can scoot through that and we can look for the key. So we're going to look for that to make sure that that matches our key, which it seems to. That's true. And it's going to step over that because that's not a true condition. Increment X by 1. Now X is a 1. Go back through our list of keys. Skip over the first one. Hit the second one. And now our test has passed over here. And we know that our logic works. Now, I might do something different here with the authentication class. Instead of doing a generic list of strings, I might do a key value pair instead. Key value pair, string. I think that's how you do that. Reg keys equals new key value pair string. And now I'll come down here. Instead of doing that, I can say reg keys dot key. I can say username key oh shoot let's see if I can do it this way. Drawing a blank right now and I'm way over my time. So what I'll do is I'll keep working on this. I want you guys and gals to kind of go back, look at the links that are in the dev links here. They're also available on my GitHub account. If you go over to my GitHub my GitHub account and you look under documentation, under dev links, they'll all be there and I'm updating them as I go along. So I'm at 1 hour and 9 seconds. So I'll make another video continuing where we left off. So until the next video, God bless. Hope you learned something. Post questions on the Slack community for Unlock Academy, and I'll see you then. Peace.